And I want to thank everybody for coming here. We went ahead and this room can hold 200 people, and we're ready for 200 people with pie and ice cream. So guess what? We're gonna have a lot of ice cream and pie left. But this is as big a group as we've seen, and we really appreciate you guys taking the time out to come and listen to Ammon today. And I want to thank any of the volunteers that came to our booth down at the fair this past week. It's a 10-day marathon. I guess they decided because Washington was going to shut this down, whatever they do, and they wanted to stay open. And it was a nice fair. We had a great time there. We met a lot of wonderful people, and some of you in the room. And we enjoyed it, and we're glad you were curious enough to come and listen to Ammon today. So I want to go ahead and introduce Ammon and turn this over to him. And I'd like to thank Ammon too for his stand for people and the representing that he's already done for the 7 years I've known of him. You know, He's already represented us, and people don't even know, what he's done for us and what he's going to continue to do. And I'm going to let him come up here, and you guys are going to believe what I'm saying right now. So, Ammon, you want to come up here and give these guys who you are, Ammon?
Thank you, Bob. Yeah. Awesome people. So we're going to end up having a discussion here. I'm not just going to speak. So once you're done with your pie and ice cream, just kind of move on up here, fill the seats. Don't worry about interrupting, because I'll say a few things and kind of give you a little bit of background. Some of you already probably know a lot of it, but others may not. So, and then we'll talk, because we have a lot to talk about here in Idaho. We have a lot of great blessings to keep secure, and I think we need to talk and have a real discussion about that. And so, first of all, again, many of you may know, but I was born and raised on a desert ranch in southern Nevada. It's I've said it several times driving around up here in northern Idaho, because it's about opposite. It's about opposite. There's no trees. There's cactuses, a lot of rock and a lot of desert. There's some, the forage is very, it's very thin, but it also, it takes about 100 acres to produce enough feed for one cow. And I think it's about the other way around here, right? But my family went into that valley in 1877. And when no one else would stay there, everybody else said it was uninhabitable. And that's a real story. But my family went in there and began to graze the cattle on the hills. They began to divert the water from the Virgin River, level fields, and began to also take in the springs from the mountains. There's several little springs, just little springs. And they began to create water heads and then to pipe that water all throughout the desert, so the cattle can use the grass on the desert, the forage. And when it gets really dry, like years like this year, we don't even know the difference. They just eat the sagebrush, actually there's not a lot of sagebrush. I always say they eat the what we call the browse, and they'll eat the cactuses. They'll eat you've seen the, I don't know if you know what the plant yucca is, but they'll eat that. They'll eat the Joshua pears. They'll eat the prickly pears, the beautiful little red fruit that's on those cactuses. They'll eat that. And if they have to, they'll even eat the cactus itself. And they actually get very fat on it. It's pretty amazing. And then certain times of the year when we get good rain, the desert will just be green with just little fresh grass, and the cows will just get really healthy and as my dad would say, just sloppy fat, and it's amazing. And that's what my family has done for now 5 generations. My dad loves to produce a commodity for the American people, as he would say it, and he calls it red meat, and he loves that. That's what he's done. We also have the ranch, the farm areas, 160 acres of farm, and my dad will raise melons. It's something that has been a tradition in our family. Cassava melons are really, really good tasting melons. Haven't been able to figure out how to grow them anywhere else. Where they're that sweet and that good. And my dad, his entire life, has wanted to raise, a lot of melons so that people can taste them and enjoy them. But we haven't been able to do that because every time we grow them off the ranch there, they just don't taste the same. And so, but I grew up on melon. In fact, I actually think I lived off of it when I was younger. Thank you. Living out of town quite a ways during the summer, we very rarely would come into town. And when you don't go into town, you don't need to look good. So I usually had jeans on. When I got older, I would wear shoes. When I was younger, I never wore any shoes. None of my siblings ever wore any shoes. And we just run and worked on the ranch and just enjoyed that our entire life and pretty much lived off of melons and then red meat, of course. So that's a little bit of who I am. Well, that's a lot of who I am. That's the blood that runs through my veins, and I'm very grateful to have been born and raised on a desert ranch in southern Nevada, just north of the Grand Canyon. And I'm very grateful for the blessing it was to live that way. And I feel like my father gave me a great asset and gave my entire family a great asset, and that was the ability to know how to work. We worked hard on the ranch. We made things do with things that we made things happen with hardly any resources. Baling wire was our best friend. We could do anything with it. I remember even welding with baling wire, and because it was just the way we were raised. And I left the ranch. My dad, when I was a young man, my dad said that the ranch wasn't big enough to produce a living for everybody. And that was kind of sad to me because I knew that when I got old enough, I was going to have to leave the ranch because I was going to have to produce and make a living for myself and a living for my family. And that was always sad. In fact, I always wanted to come back and always wanted to, go and live the life that I lived. And I always wanted my children to live the life and be raised how I was raised. And but reality is what it is, right? We all have to leave the nest and go out on our own. All of us have had to do that same thing in some way. And so it's just the way it is. And I had to do the same thing. And so what I ended up doing is I got into the fleet maintenance business. In fact, on the ranch, I don't know how it ever happened on the farm, the ranch, but I ended up being kind of like the mechanic. I did a lot of cowboying too, but my brothers, and they might disagree with me, but I'd argue with them on this, but my brothers and my dad, they loved to break it, and I was always the one fixing it. And when I was a young man, I remember, looking at the tool sections of the magazines and just, going, oh man, if I could have that tool, it'd make my life so much easier. And when I got older and started to make a little money, I started buying tools. And then it was a challenge to keep my dad and my brothers out of my tools. So I'd lock it up and they'd call me selfish. And that was kind of the battle because anyway, that was the kind of the scenario. So then I just continued with those skills that I learned on the ranch. And I started a fleet maintenance business where I managed and maintained commercial trucks. I got several good contracts. I ended up getting some national contracts. And next thing I know, a decade or so later, I've got, one of the largest fleet maintenance businesses in Arizona. And I continued on that, continued to grow that. And then I also saw that the industry didn't really have very good software. It was pretty, there wasn't anything that a fleet maintenance shop, commercial shop could purchase. And I really wanted to purchase it, and I searched and searched for actually well over a decade, almost the entire time I was in business. And I said, well, hey, if something's not out there, then let's make it. I had the resources and I had the ability, so I got a team together. I hired a programmer and I hired a project manager, and I built my own fleet maintenance shop management software, and we tested it on my customers and tested it on my technicians and tested it on my vendors and tested it on my staff, and we got it going just really good. And then we started selling it. And now that fleet maintenance shop management software is one of the leading softwares in North America. And then, life was pretty good, and I'm not going to give you all the details, but ultimately what happened is 2014, the federal government decided, and this wasn't just all one day, right? It was a progression of tyranny, I guess I could say, but they decided that ranch that we loved so much and that we grew up on and that had been in our family for 5 generations since 1877, they decided that it wasn't ours anymore, that they were going to take it, and that somehow that they had the rights to do that. And they came to my dad and said, we're going to turn your ranch into what we call a mitigation area for the desert tortoise. They were going to move the desert tortoise there. There was already tons of desert tortoise there already, but they were like, we're going to make this a sanctuary area for the desert tortoise. And my dad said, no. And they said, well, we're going to do it anyway. And my dad said, hell no. And he vowed that they would not take my heritage, that they would not take my living. He vowed that they would not do that. And he said, he was asked, what are you going to do about it? He would say, I'm going to do whatever it takes. And the media would say, well, what is it, whatever it takes? And he'd say, whatever it takes. And he did do that. Because when they came with an army, a literal army of 213 armed federal agents, 5 helicopters, MRAMs, they locked down the ranch and put snipers on the hills, and they began to assault my family. And they even threatened that if we resisted in any way while they destroyed our ranch, of course this wasn't exactly their words, so I'll quote them exactly. If you resist in any way, they will kill you. And we learned later that they were the FBI HRT team, the same team that went into Waco, the same team that went into Ruby Ridge, the same team that went into the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge. They were the same team that was at the Bundy Ranch, and they were serious. And so this BLM agent, who is a liaison, quote unquote, to my family, said that if we resisted in any way while they destroyed our ranch, that they would kill us. And so we really didn't know what to do. My mother started, encouraging us to film everything, and she started to take pictures, and we started to do our best to just get it out of what was happening. And we would send pictures of the snipers around our house, and we would report what was happening. And my brother was filming them on the side of the Highway 170, and they surrounded him because they didn't want it to be exposed. And they beat him to the ground, arrested him, took him to their compound, and interrogated him for almost 24 hours. When we finally got him back, he was bruised all over. His arms were bruised, his hands were bruised, his face was bruised all over. And that really lit a fire in us, because now they had messed with one of our brothers, and we still, didn't know what to do. We knew that we had to do everything we could to keep things peaceful, but we also knew that we must not lose this ranch. And it wasn't just because of cows on the desert. It had nothing to do with that. It had nothing to do with my dad being able to scrape out a living raising cows on the desert. It had everything to do with individual rights, with what the United States stands for. with the ability to own and to control property, and with having the state and the government control that property or not control it. To have individuals have a right to do that. That's what it was about. It was about liberty. And that's what it became about. And so we knew we had to do something. And anyway, through a series of things that happened that I believe that were overseen by God, our Father, and we were protected, and we were able to make a stand. And they tried to stop us. They tried to tase us, stick their dogs on us, beat us to the ground, body slam us, and we filmed it all. At least it was all filmed, and we sent that out to the rest of the country. And the rest of the country responded. At least a lot of people responded. And they started coming from all over the country. And ultimately what happened was enough patriots came from all over the country that it flipped everything upside down. No longer were we being the ones that were threatened. Now they were the ones that went into their compound. They knew that what they had done was wrong, what they were doing was wrong. And they began to kind of cower in there, and ultimately the people gave them an ultimatum. It says, you return the cattle back to Cliven, my dad, and you leave the area within an hour. And they accepted. They accepted those terms. And I watched 107 federal vehicles leave with multiple officers, and each one of those vehicles leave the ranch. I watched. It was like it was amazing, because it was just one after another, 107. And then cowboys went into the compound there, got the cattle, put them back on the ranch, and they never returned. They never returned after that. Now, yeah. So then, I mean, and I'm just trying to give you a background. I don't want to go too much without getting you involved in this discussion. But so then, what happened was that after that, for me, I was thrown into this, this limelight of it's hard to explain. I mean, I was just a businessman. I was a son of, a rancher. I had 6 kids. Well, at the time I had 5 kids and my wife, and I never expected, never wanted to be thrown into the public light. But I also felt a duty and a responsibility. I felt a responsibility to help people understand what happened at the Bundy Ranch, because I believed that what happened there was what was going to happen to everybody. And that actually it has and is coming true, where our rights that were clearly our rights, deeded with the state of Nevada, clearly established by our forefathers, that our rights were treated as a privilege that the government could take anytime they want, just because they want it. And isn't that what is happening to us now? Our very most personal rights, the right to our body, the right to our businesses, the right to travel, the right to worship, all of them in just the last year and a half have been basically claimed by government. They've said basically that those are not rights given to you by God. They're privileges that we grant. And we can take them away when we want to. And we can grant them when we want to. And we do that according to our, command. And that's not the way it should be. It's not the way that it was given to us, and it's not the way that our country was even legally founded. We as individuals are the sovereign. We receive those endowments or gifts from God to live in freedom, to live in peace, and to own property, including to control our bodies. Those have come from God to us. And we created government, the institution of government, for the protection of those rights. Not as a keeper of those rights, for a protection of those rights. And our government has grown and grown and grown and become bloated, and they have forgotten their purpose. And so here we are today. And, I can continue on into the story that I had, because I felt like it was my responsibility to do what I could do. And when I saw the Ammon family in Oregon suffering under the same situations that my family was in, well, I knew the answer. I knew what needed to happen. I knew the people needed to unite in their defense. And so I did all I could to bring attention to the Hammond family. And I did bring attention to, I brought international attention. But the interesting thing is that the offense from the federal government was massive. It was massive because they knew they couldn't allow the people to come and stand around another ranching family or another individual and protect their rights, their inherent rights. And so they mounted a huge force, and they came and ultimately killed Lavoy Finicum because our message was spreading. Our message was spreading. We had legislatures coming to the refuge. We had commissioners coming. We had multiple states that were asking us to come and to share our message with them. And that on the way to a meeting in Grant County, Oregon, they ambushed us. Killed Lavoy Finicum with his hands in the air, shot him in the back 3 times, and then arrested us. And they arrested myself, my brother, and then a week later they arrested my father and all my other brothers and several other people. And they put us in prison for 2 years. We fought for 2 years. A year of that I was put in solitary confinement. And ultimately, we beat him in Oregon on all the charges there with a Portland jury, believe it or not. Acquitted on all charges. And then we go down to Nevada and we fight down there for another year and a half almost. And we beat them down there and exposed them so badly that they finally had to dismiss the case. But the federal government spent nearly $100 million trying to prosecute us. And imagine that, $100 million trying to prosecute us because they knew that they had to end what was started there. They had to end. And they were not able to, and it was as if God literally reached in those prisons and pulled us out. And I believe they did that because we had more work to do. Our work wasn't done. And give you an idea that the minimum sentencing was 106 years. So if we were going to get convicted, they were going to put us in prison for 106 years. Now, at the time I was 40 years old, so I don't know if they were going to get the rest after the resurrection or what, but I'm sure they would try, if they could get away with it. But Lord had a different plan, and that's part of what I'm here to tell you, is that amazing things can be done by simple people that if we'll rely on Him, and that we can preserve our liberties. And we really can. We don't have to be victims. We don't have to just say, look, the country's going to hell in a handbasket and we're all going to go with it. We don't have to do that. Idahoans don't have to be victims. And that is part of my message. So after getting home, I really just wanted to be left alone. Now, I did. You laugh, but I wanted to be left alone.
No, I was laughing because I don't blame you.
Yeah, I know you. Because, I hadn't seen my family for 2 years. Not one time did they allow us to have any physical contact with my wife or children. Not one time. And, at the time, I had a little boy who just turned 1. I have 6 children, 3 boys, 3 girls. My little boy had turned 1, and I came home on his 3-year-old birthday. And never once was I able to have any physical contact with him the entire time. Never once. Never once was I able to say, even talk to him face to face. And so that was difficult. That was difficult. And so I just wanted to be left alone. And that was my plan. I was just going to, be a left aloneness. And I'm sure you guys know what that feels like, right? I mean, that's really, I know where that's a lot of you are at right there. You want to be a left aloneness. And I by nature, I'm that person. My wife will tell you, I'm not a very public person. I don't really, I love people, I enjoy people, but I'm not like a person who really loves to socialize. I've got a brother that loves it, and he really enjoys it. And I do enjoy people, but I'm more of a private person. And when I got home, that's what I wanted. And then 2020 happened, COVID, and I saw things that there's no way I could just stand around and allow to happen. There was no way I could allow the governor of Idaho, which I basically came to be free and to be left alone. The governor of Idaho saying that I can't worship with my community, that I can't come out of my house without his permission, that I can't travel without credentials that says that I'm an essential worker. I wasn't going to stand around and allow that to happen. So, many of you know, just a few days after he said that, and he said we can't have church services and all that, well, I planned a big Easter service. Yeah. And I have a warehouse. It's an old 22,000 square foot concrete building. And we had a great big Easter service. It was awesome. It was amazing. Because why? Not because I'm trying to be rebellious. It's because when your rights are claimed by somebody else, the thing you must do is claim them back and use them. You must. You must say they are mine. They don't belong to you, and I'm going to use them. And I don't need your permission or authority to use them. That's right. And so that's what the pattern that I set through and others through the COVID. And I ended up getting arrested 5 times. I did. I spent 65 hours in what they call the cold box in Ada County Jail. It was pretty miserable, and it wasn't very fun going back, and I didn't want to go back. I was never going to go back into a courtroom or into a jail or nothing. I wasn't going to, but I knew that I had to send a message. And then what happened was, and I'm going to be quiet here just a little bit. We're going to have a discussion, but what happened was that our legislature left us hanging. We called upon them. We're like, look, you have the power to end these orders. And also we're doing all we can to bring awareness to what's happening. We need your voice. We need you to help us. And they were afraid because they wanted to step back and see who was going to be the winner. And then they were going to join. And our legislature is very weak right now. We have to do something about that. We have to do something about that. Our governor is a tyrant who thinks he has rights that belong to us, and our legislature is too weak to check him. Yeah. And so that's where we find ourselves. So with that segue, I'd like to talk about and answer any questions you have and have a discussion here about Idaho. And I think we can have a good one. We've had great discussions all over the, northern Idaho, eastern Idaho, and down in the cities too. So yes, right here.
What is your theory about the agenda that is the tyrannical power they're trying to grab?
Okay.
Is there an ultimate agenda? And then I do have another question. I read that they were after the lithium on your property. Was that true?
No.
Okay.
Now, don't. So she said, what's the agenda? Like, what was the agenda? I'm assuming like with the state and so forth, and even at the ranch and so forth. And then she asked if there was lithium that they were after at the Bundy Ranch. Now, don't get me wrong. They are after controlling the natural resources because that's where wealth is, power and wealth. I mean, everything that we wear, this awesome building that we're in, the food that we had, our devices, our homes, everything come from the earth. Everything. right? It was either harvested or it was mined, and which I guess is another type of harvest, right? But and so they know, they understand that if they can get control of the natural resources, they can completely control the population. I mean, if you can step in front of anything coming from the earth and say, well, you have to pay us or get permission first, that's ultimate power, my friends. Ultimate power. Because you can't even feed yourself. You can't even build a home without their permission or paying them. And it puts us into complete independence. Or dependence, excuse me. I got that flipped around. Complete dependence. Where we can't, feed ourselves. And they understand that. We talk about the bad day, right? But we'll talk a little bit about that. So to answer your question is like, what is their plan? Well, when you especially, it's easy to identify in the federal government, for me anyway, because I've seen it. But there's two things going on here. You've got the extreme environmentalists, okay? And then you also have those who seek for power. And they are found within at least the land agencies of the federal government. And they work together even though they don't like each other. But they get what they want from each other because they work together. And first of all, let me explain the extreme environmentalists and how dangerous they are. Because they have a complete different theology than us. We have a Judeo-Christian understanding of the creation. We rely on the Bible and the scriptures to give us that understanding. And what do we learn from that? That God created the earth. God our Father created the earth, and He put the animals and the plants and everything on this earth, and He did it for the benefit of man. And He created mankind in His image. Okay? And we are created in His image, and He placed us here for purposes, to grow and to learn and to basically progress as spirits and individuals, right? And the earth is for that purpose, for the purpose of mankind. That's what the earth is for. That's what the animals are for. That's what the plants are for. That's what the resources, the natural resources are for. That's what we believe. That's what the Bible teaches, and that's what we believe. At least, I'm saying we, like everybody believes the same. There may be someone has a little different belief in that, so forgive me. But the extreme environmentalists, they do not believe that in God. They do not believe that the earth was created. They believe that somehow it came into existence. And then they also believe that all the species, including mankind, evolved. That we evolved, except mankind evolved intellectually faster. And so they became more advanced. And so now mankind has intellectually an advantage over all the other species. And they believe it is their responsibility, their moral obligation, their religion, to balance the species, to make it so that the human, the mankind, has a disadvantage so that they are not so much advanced over the species. And that's why you have them wanting to destroy dams, right? That's why the no-use policies in the forest. So you can't use the forest, you can't harvest the forest. That's why that they are trying to destroy ranchers and miners and loggers, because they understand that mankind uses the natural resources to their advantage, and they're trying to create a disadvantage for them. And you have to understand that, otherwise nothing makes sense, right? Why would someone want to remove a dam, right? It creates free power. It creates irrigation diversion so you can water your farms and have food. It creates enjoyment where you can fish and you can, have recreational activities and camp around it. Why would you ever want to remove a dam? It's for one reason, is to create a disadvantage and to balance the species. And if you don't understand that, you don't understand what's going on. And this theology goes all the way to depopulation, to minimizing the population of the human race. And if we don't understand this, and if we don't believe it, then here you are fighting a battle that you think is about, like, making it so that the environment is clean. That's not what this is about. It's about you being at such a disadvantage that the spotted owl or the minnow or whatever has more rights than you, because you're just another species, but you're dangerous because you have an intellect, you have a conscience. And then those in the other part of the federal government, they feed off of this. They get a ton of power and they work together. One enforces it. One gets power because of that ideology, and they work together even though they don't really like each other. And that's how it works. I know I went into pretty good detail, but right here, then right here.
That was a great answer, by the way.
Thank you.
Okay, Ammon, we know that they went after in the lawsuit, your father for his water rights.
Correct.
And I was speaking to a police officer actually Friday night. He stopped in, and his name was Jason. He said that it's hard to find land here because everybody's domestic immigration is what I'm calling it, is coming to Idaho. You can buy a piece of land, but you can't get the water rights for it. Which I find it shocking because I've only heard water rights in reference to ranching. So how can that be? And what is your plan to make sure that we as landowners, we buy a home here or a 20-acre plot, 5 to 20-acre plot, whatever, that we can access our water and we can access the minerals that rightfully belong to us when we buy our property?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't understand how.
So
water rights.
restate the question.
She's asking
What you buy a property, and correct me if I'm wrong. What you buy?
Batteries are dying on your mic.
Batteries are dying.
You're good. Go ahead.
Okay. And what about the rights? What water rights, mineral rights, and so forth when you buy a property?
Right.
Well, I can tell you, identify the problem. Right now, the federal government, even the state at some level, but it's mostly the federal government, is actually buying up all these water rights and buying up all of these mineral rights. And 72% of the subsurface mineral rights in Idaho are controlled by the federal government. 63% of the land mass is controlled by the federal government. And it's an extreme problem. And then, I don't know what the figure is on water, but it's more and more. I do have the figures in Nevada, at least in 2015. At that time, 5,062 water, I think it's 62 water rights that were once private had actually been claimed and taken over and titled into the federal government's, into the federal government. And they're stripping our rights they're stripping these rights and putting it in their name. And as governor, I'm very highly aware of this. This is something my family has been involved in for multiple decades. I mean, my grandfather was fighting this fight, literally. My father inherited that fight. And my brothers and I were involved in it ever since I was born. Ever since I was born. I have a heightened understanding of what's going on when it comes to our natural resources in the state of Idaho and in the western United States. And I also understand what I believe is the solution to make sure that doesn't happen. And constitutionally, the federal government, by law, by constitutional restriction, I should say, do not have authority to control the land and the natural resources inside a state. There are very specific things that they are allowed to control. And if they want to come in, the constitutional law is found in section 817, article 8, clause 17. And it basically says that if the federal government needs land inside a state or property, it actually says property, then they have to get the state legislature's permission. And so the state legislature would have to approve it, they'd have to pass it, right? And then they have to purchase it from the rightful owner. And then they can only use it for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings for basically national defense. Other than that, they were given no authority. And any land that was a territory, which would be pre-statehood, right, was disposed of at statehood. And Article 4, Section 4 says that they shall dispose of it, meaning they have an obligation. When it says shall, that's not optional. They shall dispose of it. Yet in Idaho, 63% of our land is federally controlled. You notice I don't say federally owned. I don't say it belongs to the BLM, Forest Service. That's a terminology we need to stop saying. It's federally controlled because they don't have rights to it. And I intend on fighting that battle as governor. I intend on using the state's power and the county's power to appropriate land and to appropriate this land to the people and the resources to the people. So that is something I intend on doing, absolutely.
I'm passing a BLM map around if people want to look at it. Let them know.
Okay, she's passing something around.
The BLM land map.
Okay, land map. Right, let's see, right here and then right here.
Just go ahead.
So, my wife and we've been married, 27 years now.
Congratulations.
Been paying on our mortgage dutifully for almost the entire time, making double payments. We get the thing paid off early. Paid it off, the house is finally mine, and guess what?
Yes, I know what you're gonna say.
So my question is, how are you gonna end the property tax, income tax, and such that? What's your plan going forward?
Perfect. So, his question is, he's been dutiful about paying off his mortgage. He's paid doubles most months. I'm just putting words in your mouth here. And you're getting it paid off, right? You've been responsible, you worked hard. It's property that you own, you think you own anyway. And you can see now that once you pay it off, you're still going to have to pay on it, right? And you're going to have to pay on it forever. And right now in Idaho, we have every day that mostly elderly people that maybe lose their job or get disabled, that lose their homes. They don't lose their homes because of the mortgage. They lose their home because they can't pay their property tax. In the 30s, during the Great Depression, more people lost their homes to the state because they couldn't pay property tax than to the banks because they couldn't pay the mortgage. It's a real problem because you can't have private property and property tax. You can't have both. You either have one or you have the other. And so I plan on eliminating property tax. I absolutely plan on that. Now, the question is what? What's the question? Someone's got to say it. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Assuming we're all reasonable people, right? Taxes exist for infrastructure. Fix the roads, pay the county employees, etc. How do you make that up if you get rid of property tax? I'm for it, by the way.
Yeah.
But I mean, math is real.
We do need to be real. And so, some of my anarchist friends say we just don't need any of it, right? And I believe them, but the reality is we do have a infrastructure mostly for our defense. But the county, what does the county do? The county assists us when it's functioning property to claim, use, and defend our rights. Claim, we have a county recorder's office where we actually go claim and actually title our rights. They help us use it because we have this awesome infrastructure with roads and internet and water and all these things. They help us use our property and to enjoy our property, right? And then we have a county sheriff when it's functioning right that we elect, and we give him the policing and arresting power to help us defend our rights. And so that is an infrastructure that works when it's very simple, when it's kept at a minimum. It is very beneficial to us. But the problem is it costs money. It costs money, and we all, if we want to benefit from that, which we do, we all have an obligation to pay into that. And property tax is how they're doing it. So we have this problem here because we can't we can't be free with our property because of property tax. And yet we have an obligation to pay for the things that are very beneficial to us when it comes to local government. And so the answer is I want to replace property tax with a consumption tax. And I'll explain that if you want. So anybody have an idea of what the average home cost in Idaho is?
Now?
Right now. Well, 2 months ago, I did the research 2 months ago. What's that? Pretty close, $403,000. Okay, in the Treasure Valley, it's $540,000, the average home. It's gone up 73% in 5 years. So you know property tax is following, right? It follows. It takes about 3 years really, but it follows. So let's just take a $400,000 home under the normal property tax right now. I'll go through this pretty quick, but I'm going to answer how we're going to get rid of property tax responsibly. Take a $400,000 home right now, depending on the county, the state or the county is receiving $2,000 to $3,000 a year off of that home. Okay, that's what the property tax would equivalent. Well, then let's say an average mortgage is 30 years long. So let's say, what would 30 years of $2,000 to $3,000? We got $60,000 to $90,000, right? So that's the number we're looking at to replace. We might do a lot of downsizing in government too and minimize that, right? So I don't want you to forget that I'm looking that direction to try to keep that number down. But right now we're looking at, okay, we need to replace that with $60,000 to $90,000, okay? So my proposal with consumption tax is the same $400,000 home. When it sells, there would be a 5% tax put on it, okay, when it sells. That tax would roll into the mortgage, okay? And once you pay that mortgage off, you also pay the taxes. And let's say 5%, well, that's $20,000. Well, that's a long shot from 60 to 90,000, right? Well, the thing is, the average home sells 3 to 5 times in Idaho in a 30-year period. So you're talking about a $60,000 to $120,000 basically state revenue. Except the difference is this: when you pay off your mortgage, the home is yours. The state can't take it. It doesn't matter if you get old or if you lose your job or if you get disabled. Once you paid off your home or paid off that tax, the state no longer can take it. So there's plenty ways in order to be free and still fund the needed functions of local government. And that is through a consumption tax, which I believe is the only moral way to tax people, because you get to decide when you're going to buy something. You get to decide how much you're going to buy, when. Yes, there is a tax on it, but you get to decide if you're ever going to buy. You can decide whether you're going to buy or not buy. And so it's the only way that you can have the agency that we should have and still fund the functions of government. So hopefully that answers your question.
Is that enough though? If the house, let's say you said a house sells an average of 2 to 3 times.
3 to 5 times.
3 to 5 times.
Yeah,
In
3 to
what
5 times.
In what
In a 30-year period. The
What
same
if-
year period
okay,
of time.
Fair. What if it doesn't? Is there
Well-
enough revenue made up? And again, I'm all for the
Yeah.
idea. As I'm not fighting you on it, I just want to understand if it's sensible.
Well, the thing is there's always what if. What if the property value of homes drop? You know, there's always what ifs, you know, and we always have to deal with those. But we have very good statistics that show that the average home in Idaho sells 3 to 5 times in a 30-year period. And so if you put a 4 or 5% consumption tax on at the time, it can be rolled into the mortgage. So the people are not paying any more. They're pretty much paying it the same way. Most people impact their taxes anyway. And so there's really no disadvantage. You know, there's always the what ifs, you know, but it's pretty hard to go off what ifs. But statistically, it's a very strong plan, and it basically allows the government to be funded and for us to own our homes. Yes.
Have you factored in state level import and export tariffs
I haven't factored in that because, so he says, have I factored in state import and export tariffs? Now, I think you're talking about using that to replace property tax altogether, or consumption.
I'm talking about that as just a factor in the state level budget.
No, and we could talk about that on a, you know, probably a different, anyway, I'm not sure whether I like tariffs or not, because then, you know, you restrict the free trade. Constitutionally, it's not authorized by a state to charge a tariff in the first place, so we'd have to fight the government over that.
So just two comments. There's lots of states that already have this real estate excise tax. Washington, just over the border, has it. Oregon has it. California has it. And it sounds like we're already doing a similar thing with vehicles in this state anyway. Every time it changes hands and you go down to registration, you get to pay a tax on it.
Yeah, the only thing I will say is Washington, these other states, they charge an excise tax plus property tax, right? Because they just grow and grow, and the bureaucracies are just bloated, and so. But yeah, it's not a new idea. And in fact, just so you know, that property tax is the new idea. Property tax is a Marxist basically idea. It's not what we built our country on. Property tax became popular at the turn of the century, and government has just grown and grown and grown. And then you have the federal government that's been taxing the people personally, and it's become really where we've got right now, you know, 40 to 60% of the people living off the other percent, and so that's the reality. What else? Right here. Did I miss anybody? Okay, right here. Go ahead.
So somebody put a question to me and said, make sure you ask him, running obviously with other candidates, you know, splitting the vote. Obviously we have an executive in the governor's office that has shown he's willing to take away our rights and not give them back. Are we splitting the vote, you know, by, you know, running additional candidates, or should we all try and get together? You know, what do you say when people say, oh, you're just trying to split the vote, and then that means that the current executive will stay in there? What do you say to those people?
So kind of to rephrase, basically you've got three-way race here. There's like 12 governor candidates, but it seems to be that 3 are kind of coming to the top that are getting the, you know, attention and will get the votes, and that is Governor Little, Janice McGeehan, and myself. And so will we split the vote? Well, it's a possibility, definitely a possibility. I think that the idea of Brad Little versus, you know, conservatives might be kind of accurate. There are some real strong factors that are in there, such as we have 307 unaffiliated voters in Idaho, meaning they don't want to affiliate as Republicans or Democrats. And we have good reason to believe that a lot of them are libertarian type. They believe in that way. We also have 30 to 75,000 new voters that have come in over the last year and a half, and they're highly aware of the tyranny that they just fled from, and they're not. I would just say, and I've said this many times, I know it's hard to have people move in, and that is definitely true. But these people have come here for liberty, and they're gonna. I mean, I watch them take notes and be really involved in our meetings and ask good questions, because they just experienced something that the rest of us really haven't so much, and they want to make sure. And they saw how it was a progression of complacency. They saw that led them to where they had to literally flee their own homes in order to be free. And so all of these things. So to answer your question, all of these factors play in. The one thing that we are certain of is that if anybody is going to beat Governor Little, and I'm going to give you some statistics here. If anybody's going to beat Governor Little, it has to be someone that can pull people out of the woodwork, someone that is polarizing, someone that they know will stand. And so this race is going to go on for a while, and probably at the beginning of the year, maybe into a month, February or something, we're gonna have to make a good decision of where we're going to go. And then finally, I'm going to say something. I'll bring you some statistics here. The battle that the executive is going to have to fight is going to be a great battle. In order to minimize the size of the bureaucracy in Idaho, the Good Old Boys Club is extremely deep in Idaho. Something that I wasn't even aware of. And also, we have an administration in the White House that is plotting and planning to strip the rights of the people away. They're not even ashamed of it anymore. They're not even bashful. They're just coming flat out and saying it. And so the duty of the state is to protect the people. And the states are supposed to be that guard against the federal government and anybody else that comes in to try to strip the rights of the people. And under the circumstance that we find us, it is not going to be an easy thing to get the state doing that while they also defend against the federal government.
Right.
And so we need to choose wisely who is going to be the executive of the state, who is going to actually defend the people. And so I'll just leave it at that, and then I'll give you these statistics here. So I think you'll...
Somebody should advise Mr. Little that he is potentially splitting the votes and he should step down.
Yeah. Yeah, give us a real choice, right? Right, that's good.
Yeah. He needs to resign, or we will resign him.
Yeah.
There you go.
Well, it's going to take me just a sec to get this pulled up, but I'm going to show you something that's really was interesting to me. That there was a survey that was done in all of Idaho. It was done of any age, 18 to 99. I guess that's not any age, but that was the range. And income from 0 to, I think, $1 million. So pretty much grabbed everybody there, except maybe some of those really rich guys, right? But it was all over the state. We don't know like if one area was questioned more than others because it was an online survey. So you'd be like browsing and it'd pop up and say, hey, what do you think about the governor's race in Idaho? And you click on it and you answer these questions. So that was a scenario. Could have been a Democrat, Republican, all of that, although there was a question asked of how many were going to vote in the Republican primaries. So everybody understands, right, that it's not November when we decide in Idaho who's going to be governor, right? It's in the Republican primaries. Because Idaho is conservative, yes, but Idaho is not necessarily a conservative state. Idaho is a Republican state. And there is a difference, especially when you get out east and you go some of these areas. You know, you want to say that they're conservative, but really what they are is they're Republican. And there is a difference. So the Republican primaries in May is really where we decide, typically, well, and historically, where we decide who's the governor, and that is the Republican primary. So just remember that. So the question here, first question was, would you agree or disagree that a state governor has the authority to shut down churches? Okay, that's the first question. So I'm going to pose that to you.
No.
No. Okay. Well, 60% of Idahoans agree or disagreed. Excuse me. Let me get that. Yeah, disagreed that the governor has the authority to shut down churches. Okay. Well, what does that leave? 40% of Idahoans either didn't know or agreed that the governor has authority to shut down churches. Okay? I mean, this is Idaho. Have they ever read the Constitution, the First Amendment? What about the state constitution? I got a state constitution in here. Article 1, Section 4 of the state constitution, and is titled Guarantee of Liberty, Religious Liberty. The first line says, the exercise and enjoyment of religious faith and worship shall forever be guaranteed. Right? And so you've got 40% of Idahoans that don't either know or disagree with this, that they think that the governor has authority to shut down churches. So now the second question is, would you agree or disagree that a state governor has the duty to protect the people's rights to worship, travel, and trade with each other? Okay, so worship, travel, and trade, is it the governor's responsibility or duty to protect those rights?
Yes.
So what do we say in here? Yeah, it is, right? That's one of the reasons why we put him in office, right?
That's his job.
That's his job, and the bureaucracies, we got a mess there. They're supposed to basically be institutions that further the protection of those rights.
Yes.
Okay? And so 74 agreed or strongly agree that the governor has the duty to protect Idahoans' rights to worship, travel, and trade. So did a little better, right? 74%. That means 25 or almost 26% because of 74.7. Those might be my anarchist friends that just don't believe in government at all, right? Or a bunch of people that don't know, or a little bit off there. So now this is where it gets interesting, even more interesting, I should say. Third question is, out of the top governor candidates in Idaho, who do you believe would be most willing to stand for your right to worship, travel, and trade? Okay, right? I mean, I was hoping it was obvious, but it wasn't, my friends. So, everybody have a nice night. I'll see you later. No, 40% said Brad Little would be most willing to protect their rights to worship, travel, and trade.
Disconnect from reality.
Yeah, 40%. So you notice that there's that same 40%, right? This 40% that either agreed or didn't know that a governor didn't have authority to shut down churches. Now you see almost the exact same number, 40%, believe that Brad Little would be most willing to protect their right to worship, travel, or trade. And what did Brad Little do? He literally tried to keep us from worshiping. He tried to keep us from traveling, and he tried to shut down our businesses from trading with each other. Now you notice I said tried. I was before tonight saying he did. And I was laying in bed last night, so that is not true. He tried. Many of them complied, right? But those that shut down their churches, they did it. Those that shut down their businesses, they did it. Those that decided to stay into their houses, they did it. And yeah, there was some. We know that there was a raid in some of the restaurants, a few. But then people pushed back and pushed them back. There was an arrest at a park with a mother that was, taking her kids to the park. There was an arrest for someone having, and I'm just talking about Idaho, for having a yard sale during COVID. There was in Moscow, there was arrest. Remember they had that church service out in the parking lot and they arrested them. So there was certainly, those people were infringed, right? But most people violate their own rights believing that government has authority they don't have. And so it's important that we understand that, and make sure we don't give up our rights, that we don't comply when they don't have authority. And so it's important to do that. But anyway, you can see the disconnect, right? 40%. And in fact, Simpson, what's the representative up here? What's his first name? Anybody know? I don't know if he's up here or not. I know he's, anyway, what's that?
Sage Dixon?
No, the U.S. representative, Simpson. It's Simpson, right? Well, I'm not talking about the state. I'm talking about the federal. Okay, then it's not this area. Sorry. So no, there's a representative by last name Mike Simpson, right? Yeah. So he's not out of here. Okay. Well, I'll give you, he's been going to Washington DC, voting to have our dams removed, right? And he's a conservative in Idaho. Well, this is the same disconnect that we're finding. I'll get it down here. Idaho Freedom Foundation did a survey, and they asked if Idahoans want their dams removed, and like 85 or 87% said no. And then they asked if they would vote for Mike Simpson again, and like 80% said yes. And see, we have a problem in Idaho. And it's a real issue that actually is going to cause us to possibly become like an Oregon, like a Washington, like a Nevada, Colorado, New Mexico, California. Right? And if we don't watch out, we're going to end up just like them. And what is that? Where our land and resource is not available to us, where we have a Hunger Games type situation, where we have the capital city down there, and the rest of our districts sending them funds and natural resources, and we don't have any control. That's what's going to happen. That's what happens in Oregon.
Where else
That's
to
what
run
happens
to
in.
after this?
What's that?
This was the last place to run to.
Yeah, that's why we came
Or
here.
after that.
Yeah, we have to stand, and that's why I'm here. I'm here. Yeah. Of course, want you to vote for me, but I'm here because if something happened to me or something, I'm just a person. We have to stand in Idaho. Things need to be different in Idaho.
Yes.
We need to. Why can't it be different in Idaho? Why it needs to be different, right? That's what we live here for. That's why we're here. That's why we came here. And so I also think that it's let me get you here. Just you're on the deck. I believe that it's much easier. I think it could be much easier and more probable to secure our rights the way that we see them with these states' resources, rather than trying to just create some other way to defend ourselves. I think it would be wise to go after the state's resources and try to get the state to do what the state is supposed to do.
Yes.
Right? I mean, I'll defend my rights, and I know most of you will here, one way or the other. But wouldn't it be good if we could get the state to do its job?
Yes.
Wouldn't it?
Yes.
So, thank you.
I completely agree with everything that you're saying. And I've been a Bonner County resident for over 50 years now. And as far as Idaho being Republican, absolutely, 100%. My question for you is, how are you gonna, okay, you're meeting all of these. Do you have any strategies or anything to start to wake people up, get them motivated, get them to do something? That's why I joined People's Rights and stuff, because I want, I'm tired of me telling other people to do stuff. I need to go ahead and do my part, and maybe even do more than my part for all those people that aren't doing their part. So do you have some strategy?
Yeah, I've rallied people before. And
Sort of getting thrown in prison.
Well, strategy that doesn't involve incarceration.
so people, that is kind of funny, but I will say this though. So I'm going to give you an answer in a couple different ways, but let's look at history, right? We have the Declaration of Independence, right? A beautiful document that says all men are created equal, right? That they've been endowed by their Creator with unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that government was instituted for the protection of those rights, okay? And that is an amazing document that set forth a understanding that really wasn't understood in the world at that time. Okay, and then we fought an independence war. We won, and then several years later, almost a decade later, we draft the Constitution and ratify it. But the Constitution is a little different. They call it the Great Compromise, right? Where there's a certain type of people that only get 2/3 of representation. Okay? Well, wait a minute. I thought we had said that all men were created equal. And we still had a slave population in this country. And it was a compromise. We didn't live up to our founding document, the Declaration of Independence. So then we go 100 years forward now, and we're in a civil war over basically this issue that we didn't get right. Okay? And I think the right side won, and we ended up with the 14th Amendment that says by law that you can't enslave somebody and you have to treat all people equal. Okay? Now, fast forward to another 100 years in the 1960s. What was going on? The civil rights. Well, wait a minute. I thought we fought a civil war. What was happening? I thought the law got it all right. I thought we got this straightened out. Yet we have people that can't sit in front of the bus, go into public bathrooms, go to school, right? They're not being treated equal. And it was an issue. So of all the things that happened, founding document, independence war, the Constitution ratification, which was absolutely amazing, by the way, to be able to do that. Right? There was, 100 years, and then a civil war, an amendment to the Constitution, then a whole another 100 years. And still, this really wasn't worked out. And what corrected it? So all the law and all the wars and all the statutes and the amendment and all didn't correct it. What corrected it?
The people.
Rosa Parks sat in front of the bus. They insisted to go into the public bathrooms. They did not comply. They began to live and say, we will be treated equal. And that's what straightened it out. And then all the local courts and the politicians and everybody else got behind that and got it straightened out almost to the point where it's gone too far almost, right? With different things, but that's what I'm trying to say. And I know it's not a direct answer, but hopefully you can draw, because it is literally the people must live free. And that's what corrects things.
Individual rights.
And the courts will follow. And so the legislatures will follow. They want to be on the winning side, right? And so the people will decide whether we're going to be tyrannized or not. The people will decide whether we're going to be free or not. And it's how you live. It's the way you live. And so that's what I have been doing, and that's what I will continue to do. I'll continue to rally the people, encourage them to live free. And then the state, as a governor, I'll do all I can to protect that right. Protect that right. I hear.
So while I was working with your campaign booth at the fair,
Thank you, by the way.
You're welcome. I've had some interesting questions, as you can imagine. One that just came up in my mind was I had a couple people say, "Well, isn't he the guy, that is causing all this trouble down at the Capitol and intentionally getting arrested over and over?" And my response is similar to what you just gave, but I'm kind of curious how you would respond, or how you would like me to respond to those types of questions about, are you just out there causing trouble, your strategy, you don't know when to choose your battles, things like that, are some of the comments that I'm getting.
Yeah, well, hopefully, what I just explained helps understand a little bit. But what's been happening, imagine if people's rights didn't respond in Idaho. What would have happened? No one would have responded. We literally led the charge. And it cost us getting arrested. It's a difficult thing. It comes with a cost. Martin Luther King was arrested 26 times. Is he just a troublemaker, or was he standing for something? Was he meaning to do something? And I know Martin Luther King, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to compare myself to Martin Luther King, and so I just say that to the media here. Right? But the reality is that's what, we went to the Capitol building. There was a whole bunch of us. There was hundreds of us. I know there's some people in this room that were there. We went there, we had no intention on whatsoever doing anything but participating and encouraging our legislatures to basically end this immunity bill that Governor Little was trying to give himself. When we get there, the Capitol, or the House gallery floor was locked. They wouldn't let us in. ISP is blocking it. Well, our Constitution very clearly says that the people have a right to access the Capitol building during the legislature, during the session. It's the law. And they were breaking that law. And so people pushed in. They did, and they rightfully did that. Well, what happened was, at that point, they basically said, well, the reason they did that was because of Ammon. And I can honestly tell you, and the people who were there can honestly tell you, I did not lead that charge. I would, but I didn't. I didn't have to. Other people did it on their own. And so, but they thought that it was me that did it, and I don't blame them for thinking that way. And they began to plot, and they actually plotted it even before, to be honest with you. We've got their emails of how they would get me to not be able to be at the Capitol building. Why? They did not want me to influence, and all the people to influence the legislature. And so basically, what you can answer there is that, why weren't you there with us? Where were you? Do you understand the rights that were being questioned in Idaho? Do you understand the circumstance that we are facing right now? Where were you, and what have you done? And so, anyway, it wasn't easy, but I know that that's not really a clear answer, but that's my answer. So, go ahead.
I have another couple questions.
Okay.
But I'll do one at a time in case somebody else.
You're representing all those people that you talked to
I
at the group.
am. Because if I get these questions again, I want to be able to answer them
All right.
correctly.
So, Bob, you got a timer?
I know Kristen
We're gonna
running
do
it up
it.
here. We better
Yeah,
run it
right. We're gonna do what the school boards do, and you got 3 minutes. Well, maybe what other politicians do, and they have you write down your stuff, and then their staff reads them, and then they only answer the easy questions. Right? Yeah. No, go ahead.
So I had one gentleman come up to me and say, well, I can't support Ammon because he's a libertarian and libertarians don't believe in borders. What's your response
Okay,
to that?
so libertarians don't believe in borders, is that? And I'm a libertarian. So I think the reason that came up was because when a lot of this immigration and border security came up, I took a different position. And I still stand strong with that position, because immigration, whether it's in Idaho or whether it's in the country, is basically 3 types of people coming in. You have those who want handouts, right? They want a free meal, they want free housing, they want all those things, right? Or you have those that are coming for criminal opportunity, okay? Or those that want to come and be free. They don't want a handout, they don't want to commit crime, they want to come here and work, be free, and be good neighbors. You have those 3, okay? And that's, I realize there's variances there, but that is who is coming in and who has, and it's the same since the beginning of this great country. Well, if you want to eliminate the first one, which we do, right? We don't want immigration coming into Idaho or coming into the country that wants handouts. We don't want that. What do you do to eliminate that?
Stop the handout.
You eliminate the handout, right? There's no big border security that needs to go on with that. That's the problem inside the border, right? Then second, how do you eliminate people coming in for criminal opportunities? You get our penal system, our justice systems working right? And when someone commits a crime, and especially as an immigrant, it really doesn't matter, that is handled quickly, that the perpetrator is identified, caught, and punished according to the law. And then people are going to go, don't go to Idaho. Don't go to the United States of America to do this and do that. Don't do that because, man, that's the place you don't want to go. And you actually send a message to everybody and they don't want to come here for criminal opportunity. And then who do you have left? You have those that want to be free, that are good neighbors, that work for what they get. They understand the value of property, right? And none of it requires a big wall, which that's fine. A lot of people got behind that, and that's fine. But the problem with the wall is very expensive, and then you have to have another bureaucracy guarding the wall. And believe me, there is a need to defend our borders, right? I'm not saying that. There is. And sometimes that need during different times increases and decreases, right? But I really don't want a wall that's going to keep me in. And I don't think that was my position. I just didn't think it was necessary under the circumstances that we're finding ourselves in, because, and I believe it's the answer for Idaho too. I absolutely believe that we must stop the welfare in Idaho, the state welfare in Idaho. Allow the families, the friends, and the churches to do what they do best. They do it way better than the state anyway.
Yes, they do.
Right? And if you do that, a good part of our problems in Idaho will be resolved. And then we need to strengthen our criminal justice system and get it back to a system of restitution rather than a system of incarceration. And it will truly fix basically the problems here in Idaho when it comes to the wrong people coming here. If they want to come for handouts, don't come to Idaho, go to Oregon. Go to Washington. Don't come to Idaho. And I intend on doing that because I imagine the problems that we basically miss, that do not become our problems by doing that. And Idaho should be different in that way. So, okay, hold on, because I got one here, and then I got one. Then I'll come back to you. Okay, go ahead.
Could you talk about your experience and your point of view on as to why local law enforcement have been unlawfully trespassing people, and what a big problem that poses to everyone, and what we can do about that?
Yeah, it is a big problem because it's become their go-to thing. You know, where you can't go attend a school board meeting, even though the open meeting laws clearly give you that authority. I mean, it's supposed to be representative government, right? And yet these school board members and superintendents are trespassing people for attending the meetings, you know, and it's not for disruption. It's not for, because they're interrupting and all of that. It's not because of decorum. It's because either they don't have a mask or they don't want them there or something to that effect. And then we have our local law enforcement coming right in and just doing exactly what the school board or the superintendent wants them to do. Not thinking about the oath they took to the Constitution, not thinking about what proper representative government is. They're just thinking, well, they have control of the property and this is trespassing and that's it. So the real answer is this, and I know a little bit about it because I've been fighting in the courts over this quite a bit. And the real answer is that in Idaho, the trespass code is 187008. That is not to be used on public property, period. And we had Judy Boyle come up in our trial. She's the author of that bill. Christy Zito co-authored that bill. We had others that were on the committee when that bill was passed. They testified under oath in a district court of Idaho that bill does not authorize any level of government to trespass on public property. And that, it's just that clear. And so that would be the way I would fight it legally. That would be the way I would approach it. And I would educate your local law enforcement officers that the legislatures never authorized the prosecutors and the school boards and stuff to use it that way. Now they have authority to remove somebody from the property, but not to trespass. But they can only do it if the meeting is being disrupted by the person. There's a criteria. They can't just say, I don't like that person because I don't like that person, so they're going to remove them. And that's the way they're using it. There has to be, I don't have it in front of me, but basically it says like an extreme disruption. It's not just a disruption. It's like an extreme disruption. And once that has happened, then they can ask the officers to remove them if they can't restore decorum without having them removed. So, okay, so we're right here.
Okay, you'd know better than I would because you've been traveling throughout the state. Here in Bonner County, I'm guessing 70 to 80% of the people aren't wearing masks, and they don't believe in the scamdemic, and that's probably 99.9% of the people here. And our one mask person just left.
Dang, we could've given her a hard
They
time.
want to wear a mask and knock yourself out. But I see that as one group that's definitely not going to be voting for you. How is that throughout the state? Do you face, because that's going to be a real tough one to overcome. And I'm not even saying do you have a plan to overcome it, because I don't think you have a chance.
Well, so 40% of Idahoans are probably ones that wear a mask, and that's probably about the reality.
Right, 40%.
But that includes the Democrats, that includes the, I don't know, who else would be the Democrats, I guess. The Democrats. No, the rhinos. Oh, I forgot the rhinos. The rhinos, yeah, that includes the rhinos. So anyway, but yeah, it's a pretty good percentage. I will say this, when you're talking about statistics, I was reading this. I gotta, log in. And because there was one more question that was asked. And I give this to you as a little bit of confidence in supporting me. Because I told you that Brad Little had 40% of the people said that he would be most willing to protect their rights, remember? Anybody have an idea who was second? Yes, I was second at 32%. Janice McGeehan was at 27%. And then it says, so then the question was asked, if the elections were today, who would you vote for as the Idaho governor? Pretty good question, right? Calculating the ultra-conservative Idaho voter, this poll shows Brad Little leading the contest, Ammon Bundy gaining him on at second, and Janice McGeehan bringing up the rear, with a small number indicating they are not voting or writing in another candidate. So, yeah, I mean, this race is really open, and the political climate in Idaho is different than it's ever been, because people are truly asking questions like, who is going to protect our rights? And so polls, a poll is just a snapshot in time. This was just one poll. We'll do many polls as we move on. Others will too, and we'll be able to determine. Now, do you have your hand up?
Yeah.
Okay, so here and then here.
Okay.
Go ahead.
She made me think of this, the gal with the questions from other people, and this is one that came up to me. Militias and 3% groups, a long time ago, but it came up the other day. You made a statement, I believe, referring to them as warmongers. I don't know what it was, I really didn't care at the time. And they said that they couldn't get behind you because of that statement, but knowing you, as I have over the past 6 years, I know you don't say something unless there's a reason behind it, a method to your madness, or whatever you want to call it. And I know you don't think of them that way. So can you clarify so I can give a proper answer?
Yeah, I would have to hear what
Okay, 'cause
reference
know
I
you
said
don't
it
think
in.
that of
Yeah.
them, so.
What reference I
Okay.
said it in,
Yeah,
you know.
cause I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
I don't remember that, you ever saying that, so.
Yeah, I mean, if you had the video or something like that, you know,
Okay.
then I
wasn't
could
sure if you would
understand.
remember or not, but I remembered that when she said questions from other people, I thought, oh yeah, so.
Yeah, that's what I always say that to people, hey, can you,
Yeah, I'll
you know,
look for
did
it.
you watch the video? Because people hear things and different things. I will say this one too, because people are worried like about the media, about what the media has said about me and so forth. And I could test, I'll do it here, I'll do the same thing. How many in here are subscribed to the Idaho Statesman? Amazing, huh? I've done this all over the state. Not one person has raised their hand. Right, Wendy? Yeah. Not one person. And yet we. And yet. Yeah. And yet we think somehow that the articles in the media, the mainstream media, are going to sway a whole bunch of people. Well, it might sway the 12 and a half people that subscribe to the Idaho Statesman, but they're never going to vote for me anyway, right? And so we have to get over this idea that somehow these things that they've said, and it, you know, in the mainstream media, go look at their videos. Go to like MSN's videos, and they got like, you know, 450,000 people. There's 330 million people in this country, and they're getting views of less than 500,000, and they're the international or the national news source. They're real pathetic. They're real pathetic, and they're liars. They have an agenda, you know, that's contrary to freedom. You know, they push this extreme environmentalist theology, and we can't let them make us believe that they're the ones that are controlling the narrative. They're not. They're not. So hopefully that answers
say
your
bad
question.
stuff about you, it's only because you're not for sale.
Yeah, I mean,
Just like the last president.
it's a badge of honor.
They say bad things about you, that's a good thing.
It is. It is.
Touch on the
So-
CBS thing you did the other night, if you could, that was really good.
Okay, I could do that. There was another question right here.
I
Sorry.
was just wondering, going forward into the primaries coming up, are we gonna have any debates? I know the incumbents usually not real excited about debates, but I think it'd be really great for you.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so because, I mean, I hope we do. I hope we have lots of debates. I know that there's different organizations like, you know, Idaho Freedom Foundation, Freedom Man PAC. Those different organizations are going to have, planning on having debates.
Read out
And I
names.
hopefully they invite me. Right here, then right here.
Well, so two things, just real quick to that, I did have there's a local group here, and I told Wendy about this, that we would like to, maybe in this facility, or maybe a larger facility, do a forum at least. And so we were wondering, do you happen to know, because Little hasn't actually thrown his name in the hat just yet, he'd probably wait till last minute, right?
Yeah, because he doesn't want to be questioned. But he's posturing.
Right.
He's already posturing. I've seen some of his, you know, people they were at that Republican thing in Idaho City, and so, you know, we can only hope that he doesn't run, but I think he's running.
Do you happen to, so I think we were trying to strategize when would be a good time to have a forum, at least, not it would necessarily be a debate, but at least a forum.
Right.
We want to wait till after the deadline to announce your candidacy, but also before the deadline to withdraw.
So, March 11th, I think, is the deadline, you know, and then September 18th is when I'm going to get everything as far as the registration and all of that with the Republican Party. So, sometime between then.
Okay, I do have a question.
Okay.
So, some local conservatives, one big issue for them with you is, and I know that you address some of this on your website, but I was sent somebody chopped out one of your videos, and it focused just on the part where you talk about defunding the police, and that little snippet didn't really dive into what that means to defund the police,
Yeah.
because people think that you're just,
Yeah.
you know, want to do away. So can you just maybe explain?
Yeah,
that?
so that was a video that was probably like 15 minutes long, and they took a little section out of it. So yeah, but I'm glad to explain myself because my position has never changed. It's very, very much the same. And remember, when I did that video, we were in the height. It was like in April, I think, April of 2020. And we're seeing, these things going on. We're seeing where Sarah Brady was arrested at the park with her children. We were seeing that, all these things are happening across the country. They're happening. And I pose the question, like, who is going to be the one to actually infringe upon your rights? Who are going to be the ones that actually enforce it, I should say? And what is the answer to that?
Law enforcement.
It'll be those that will comply to orders, unconstitutional orders, against their oath, right? And they're the ones that are going to infringe upon us. And anybody, you just have to understand that. That is the body of people that will act. You look at Canada, you look at Australia, you look at those things that are happening. It is the law enforcement officers. And I know that many people have a love affair with the law enforcement officers. I don't. I respect those that stand up for our rights. I mean, I know that it is a position that has to be, we have to have in this country. And so, but so when I'm talking about in that scenario, we have to make sure that our law enforcement agencies don't get too big, that they stay, small. They are represented by the people, or they're representing the people, that they don't become this massive bureaucracy, that we don't have multiple levels where we can't keep them in check, where we can't, respond to them politically when they step out of bounds. And a huge part of that is funding. And unfortunately, after that is when all the defunding thing happened. And so they've had a little fun with that. But I fully stand beside my words there and know where the danger truly is if our rights are going to be forcefully taken from us, who's going to do it.
So just kind of in response to that, so in addition to what you just said, so some of these folks are saying that they feel that we don't have enough police resources currently. So to take away from that would harm us, and why not focus on police reform instead of defunding? And then my kind of question here is too, we're not just getting funding here locally. Some of the funds we're getting are they not coming down from the federal government?
Absolutely they are.
And I tell people that, when you take money from the federal government, that's not free money. You're agreeing to something by receiving that. So I just kind of wanted to
Okay,
put that on.
so let me respond to you. So Idaho has more officers per capita than any other state. Idaho incarcerates more people than any other place in the world. And than any other place in the world. Okay, Idaho incarcerates more people than any other place in the world. Okay, so it's not about police reform. It's about making sure that our law enforcement agencies are controlled by the people. And that is connected to funding, it's connected to awareness, it's connected to standing up, and being public against them. And we have to understand that not everything all officers do all the time is good. Right? And unfortunately, we have to divorce ourselves from this love affair that we have in Idaho with our policing agencies. And honor them and respect them when they do it correctly, but hold them accountable when they don't. And stop this, that they're always going to be right all the time, every time. And if we don't do that and come to the awareness of that, we will build these bureaucratic agencies that say they have the force of law, and it will be to our detriment. So that's my answer. Yeah.
So I'm listening to all these issues you're going through tonight, and I grew up in a pretty conservative household. throughout the years, we'd say this career politician, that career politician needs to go. What about term limits? And my parents and my grandparents said, well, this is America. We've always had term limits. If the voters don't want them, just get rid of them. They vote them out. But it doesn't happen. And at this point, I've had a belly full of career politicians, and I'd like to see some term limits, really.
Okay, so I'm sure there's a question in there about term limits. Right?
What does Ammon think about
What do I think? So I'm going to try to articulate this as short as possible. We've been here for a little while and kind of need to probably wrap up. Bob, you tell me, just kick me off when it's ready. Ready. Or I guess you guys can just stop asking questions. I'm willing to go. I'll go longer. But I feel what I'm about to say is extremely important for those who truly want to understand and know what needs to happen to change the state and our country. Because our elected representatives, our legislators hold very little power. Very little power. And we think they do. They hold very, very little power. And they're supposed to have a lot more power than they do. So where is that power being held? It's being held in the bureaucracies in the executive branch. Your Department of Health. Who would ever have thought that the Department of Health would claim that they had authority to lock you in your house? But they did. That they have authority to inject you with something that never been really tested, and it's just a mosh. Oh, YouTube's going to kick me off.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what about CPS? We have all of these agencies, and the power is being held there. And so, and we have to understand that's where the power is being held. Our legislatures were supposed to go represent us and keep them in control, to oversee them, right? And now these superintendents, the directors, the secretaries, right? They laugh at the legislatures. I've seen it with my own eyes. I used to have a good friend that was like third man on the totem pole in the state commission office in Arizona. And he would say, oh, the elected, they think they're going to control us. We're the ones that we're the ones that go there every day. We're the ones that make a career of it. We're the ones that know what's going on, and they think they're going to control us. He would tell me stories, this is actually before the Bundy Ranch, about how if there was an elected representative they didn't like, they would all just get together and they would make a plan and they would get rid of that representative. And so the power is held in the bureaucracies. The Department of Administration, the Department of Health, the Child Protection Services, and I could go on and on and on. And the same thing's happening in the federal government, even worse. And the challenge is keeping the bureaucracies of the executive branch on a federal and a state level from coming down upon us. And the representatives were supposed to be like, look, we're the boss. You're not supposed to do this. Get back in your box. But they have completely forgotten that that's their job, the legislature. So to answer your question, yeah, in a normal circumstances, in a normal constitutional republic with a functioning right, yeah, term limits would be the way we would probably want it. But what happens now, if you get rotating representatives coming in every 4 or whatever years, it's just going to empower the bureaucrats even more. Because it's going to take 2 or 3 to 4 years before a legislature even understands what's going on, and then he's gone. And the bureaucrats will completely run amok. Even though I'm 100% for term limits, under our circumstance right now, we have to have legislatures that are going to stand and say, look, you do not have that power. Governor Little, who received $18 billion from the federal government for COVID relief funds, right? You know how he's determined to spend that? In Executive Order 2020-07. Remember that, 2020, it was the 7th one he did in 2020. It says, I'm going to paraphrase, I'll use a couple lines exactly the way it says it, but he says basically we're receiving all these funds from the federal government for COVID relief, and they're going to come to the office of the governor. And the governor, Brad Little, he says, wherefore I, Brad Little, that's what he says, I'm going to create a committee, and that the members of this committee will serve at the pleasure of the governor. And that these funds will be spent from the office of the governor. Where are state expenditures supposed to be spent? Who's the one that determines that? The legislature, right? The average Idaho annual budget is like $1.6 billion. Well, he just received $18 billion. And he gets to spend it with him and his buddies that serve him at his pleasure. And the legislature hasn't said a word about it. They're not, I mean, imagine. They should be throwing the biggest fit. There should be a lawsuit. They should try to get the executive, the judicial, the judicial and the legislature should try to stop them, right? Stop him. And it's very weak. Another thing that happened is the law makes it so that the governor is only supposed to have an executive emergency order in place for 30 days. And then it says that if it's extreme, it can be another 30 days. So 60 days, that's it. And then the law actually says, the state code actually says, if he doesn't end the order, that the legislature shall convene on the 90th day. And then they can concur, as it says, concur on a joint resolution and end the order. Well, so we, through certified letter and many other ways, notified the legislature of these laws. And they all got together and they said, okay, look, and guess what? Guess what the governor's attorney told the legislatures? You can't assemble without the governor's permission. The legislature, and you know what the legislature said? Okay, I guess we can't assemble without the governor's permission. You've got the executive branch telling the legislatures that they can't assemble to end the executive order, when the law clearly is written so that the governor can't just keep the order forever, which is what we're under, right? He's never lifted those orders. And he won't lift them until all that money's spent or until he's removed from office. And if I'm put in office, what I'll do is I'll package any money that's left and I'll send it back to the federal government. I'll take all the memorandums of understanding. Thank you. All those strings that are attached to it, which we call memorandums of understanding, or they call that, I'll package all of them up. I'll put a stamp of nullification on it, and I'll send it back to the federal government. And I'll do all I can to block the federal government from coming and putting the people into undue obedience through funding. And that's another huge problem that has to happen. And so, hopefully I answered that question. Maybe we take one more, or maybe we just finish up. So I'll take one, maybe two more, and then we'll wrap it up. Unless you guys are done, and that's fine too. Right here.
I have a question about something that you said, Sarah Brady.
Okay.
Do you know if she was prosecuted or sentenced, or did they drop it? What happened with her?
So Sarah Brady, they haven't dropped the charges. She's still fighting them. They haven't, now jury trials are suspended, so she's never been able to get to trial. And the last I heard, she had spent $13,000 of her own money trying to fight this. And, the state the prosecutors are just, they're just wicked. Here's a mother that was going to the park and was arrested in Idaho and was arrested by an officer. And they won't dismiss the case because they're going to prove their point.
Isn't her husband part of the police?
He's a detective for the Boise Police Department. And, you know, but I mean, it's not his fault, you know, but it just shows the dynamic there. They're literally, I mean, this is a mother that was at a park with her children. And they weren't even playing on the playground, by the way. The playground was all, you know, taped off. They were on the wood chips. And, you know, the officer came and started, you know, insisting, and Sarah was like, look, this is not right. And she began to question him, and he just immediately arrested her. And it just goes to show where we're at. We were really there. And now she's fought and has to pay at least, I mean, this was a couple months ago I talked to her. $13,000 is how far she was into it so far in legal defense. And she still never made it to trial. Imagine, it's been over a year.
Yeah, she was up here last.
Yeah.
And
So
would the email campaigns and things like that we used to do help her? Phone calls? Things
well,
like that?
people's rights have surrounded around her, and
Well, for
you
those
know.
of us, I mean, I know I'm still fighting that and everything, but those that aren't involved in people's rights, would something like that help? I mean,
Well, we could create another system. I think we have people's rights, so you can reach out to her and support her. You know, do your part there. Yeah, right here.
Okay, so we have these, of the 19 senators or rhinos that voted for the infrastructure bill to our Idahoans.
Right.
Are you gonna talk about them at all?
Well,
I
I
mean,
did
that
since
needs to get out,
Yeah.
and they need to lose their jobs.
Well, I'll tell you this though. She said there's 19 senators that are supposed to be Republicans that voted for the infrastructure bill on a federal level. Basically, the infrastructure bill is an enforcement bill of this extreme environmentalist theology. That's what it is. They're trying to fund it so they can, you know, remove dams and have billions of dollars to basically fund the ideology of these environmentalists, extreme environmentalists. So, yeah, we could talk about it, but I'll be honest with you. One is I'm not running for a federal position, but just hear me out. And Washington's lost. Washington's never going to come back, in my opinion.
That's right.
I don't know that Washington's ever going to come back. I mean, there's going to have to be a major, and it's going to have to be the states that do it. If Washington's ever going to be restored to anything that's beneficial for the people, it's going to have to be the states that say, you will not do this anymore to us. And so my point is, and I'm not trying to, diminish anything you're saying. I'm just saying, like, let's focus on Idaho. Let's focus on our counties and our homes. Let's come home, America. Come home to Idaho. And let's get this straightened out here, and then maybe we can worry about Washington, D.C.
I understand what you're saying, but they are Idaho. They are representing Idaho on a federal level. And all I'm saying is the information needs to get out, because I don't think a lot of people know.
Yeah, I understand.
Would you be willing to bring it up and to talk about it?
Yeah. I mean, I thank you for bringing it up here. I think it further shows the disconnect of the Idaho voter, right? That, I mean, if people understood what was in that infrastructure bill in Idaho, I think almost, a huge percentage of Idaho would oppose that and see the danger of it. But yet there's a disconnect. They'll still vote, well, hopefully we can change that, but they're still voting for those people, and then they're going and representing Idaho and furthering a terrible agenda that's actually going to be destructive and possibly fund things that will literally change the conservative identity of Idaho. So, yeah, thank you. So right here, and then right here, actually, I think she was first. Can she go first? Sure. And then you.
I new to all this, again, the Convention of States. Do you know anything about that? What that is? What's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, it's a theory that the states can convene, which they can, through the Constitution authorizes them, and they could do certain things and change certain things. However, I don't see there's enough principled state leadership in any state to be able to convene and somehow do better than our founders did when they first did it. I think it's absolutely dangerous that the states would try to convene and do constitutional amendments or ratify things that would apply, to the United States government. I think, to be honest with you, and I know there's a lot of good people that are not going to like what I just said, but the reality is that I do not believe that there's enough principled leadership in any of the states to somehow convene and get it better than what we have it right now. We just need to live and enforce what we have, this Constitution, both state and federally. And because the answers are there, it perpetuated us into the greatest nation that ever has been known in the history of man, with more freedom and more peace, right? The problem is we have abandoned the principles. So, okay, right here.
First of all, just to answer her question, when I first heard that about the Idaho senators, I was outraged too and was bad-mouthing of everybody. So then I thought, well, before I go any further, I should do a little bit of investigation. And at least what I found out, according to the senators, they voted for it because they thought it was the lesser of the evils, the inevitable evils. I haven't checked into it anymore than just that, but it didn't sound quite as bad as when I first heard it.
Right, but what's wrong with a no?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Why do they have to say yes to something?
But until I read into it more and found out really what was going on, I thought it's maybe not fair to, I will go, I have nothing in support of them one way or the other. But my other question was, is when you talked about the billions of dollars that Idaho got, isn't there some kind of an oversight? Is there something that we can do that can check up on where this, there's a perfect opportunity to expose the governor, because there's sure to be some malfeasance, misuse of funds. That much money,
yeah, that's
there ought to be some way that we can check up on that and find out what he did with what he's doing.
What he's doing with it. Yeah, I think it'll expose a lot. One thing did you hear that the state of Idaho has a deficit of like 1.2 or million? Did anybody hear that?
Surplus.
Or excuse me, not deficit, a surplus. Yeah, a surplus. So here we just shut down our businesses. We did a whole bunch of things that were just economic destruction, right? And then coming out of this, we're now saying that we have a surplus in the state of Idaho. No, they just have so much money now that they don't even know what to do with it. And of course, the surplus looks really good for Governor Little. And many of the people of Idaho will say, "Oh, what a great governor! He took us through he took us through 2020 and all of those things, and we ended up with a surplus." And really, what it is a fiscal irresponsibility. And somebody earned that money. Someone worked for that money. That $18 billion. Either that or they just printed it, which we know they do both, right? But that come at a cost, and they just throw it around like it's nothing, and then use it and say, well, we now have a surplus in Idaho, and it's just more of the same stuff. So anyway, my friends, I hope that this hasn't been I hope it's been a little entertaining, but more importantly, I hope that it's been enlightening. I hope that it helps you understand what we're facing. I could have got up here and, really charged you up, and you could have been cheering for me, and, maybe I could have rallied you in that way and really made things really exciting. But I feel it's more important that we talk about the reality of what we're facing. And because then we can do something about it. We have the power to act. And I don't want to be a person, and I know you don't either, that loses the power to act, so all we are is people that are acted upon. And we have a great opportunity here right now. Idaho has an opportunity to be a bastion of freedom, an example to the rest of the world. And we have the mindset and the people that understand that. And where else is it going to happen? And it's kind of like this wave of nonsense and tyranny and everything has waved in on us, and we've flooded here to Idaho. And we have to, as it hits us, which it is right now, we have to, we have to push back. And hopefully we send that back throughout the states and throughout the world and preserve freedom for a little longer. And I believe we can do that. And I ask for your support in that. I ask for your financial support. I ask for you to speak to your friends. I ask for you to go out and be this army of say, hey, look, this is where we're at. And we're mounting a campaign where we're going to be, doing video, and we're going to be scaling this in a massive way. And we need your help to help fund that. We need your help to spread it around because we're highly censored. We do have some advantages though, but we're highly censored. So the way to get over that is paid ads. Paid ads, right? Because campaigns are not supposed to be restricted with paid ads. So things that I couldn't say, just a few months ago before I announced and filed with the Secretary of State, things that YouTube and Facebook and even the radios and TVs and all that would censor me from saying. Now I can say them because I have a campaign. I'm an official campaign with the C1 from the state of Idaho. And they legally can't restrict me from saying certain things. So I need, I'm coming here and with shame, I'm asking you for your money. It's always so hard to ask for money, but go to votebundy.com and donate there and help us spread this message and spread this word. And I thank you for your time. You're very patient with us.